Welcome back. Now, the global review of the death penalty shows global executions fell by 1/3 last year. It's the lowest figure this decade, but China's record, where executions are thought to be in the thousands, is a state secret and remains classified. Now, for more on this, I'm joined in studio by Mienke Steytler from Amnesty International South Africa. Mienke, thanks a lot for joining us this evening on Newsnight.
Hello, thank you for having me.
These figures are alarming around, the institution of the death penalty, as well as the fact that countries have experienced a significant decrease, or slight decrease really, since 2018. But to know that China, for example, still has its figures that remain undisclosed simply because it's classified, and they've got the jurisdiction simply because they're a communist country.
Yeah, so it's one of the big secrets of the world. Even for an organization like ourselves, it's been campaigning against the death penalty for many decades, working towards human rights for many decades. China has always remained this closed-off country, and their argument is, it's our business, it's not your business. But for us, what's really troubling around it is that we don't believe that the death penalty works. We don't believe that it is a deterrent for crime. Our research shows this. We believe that judicial systems should be reformed. Judicial systems should also look at the socioeconomic reasons for why people commit certain crimes, and people should have fair trials. And with China being this closed, it's impossible for us to find out if these thousands of people, which we think is in the thousands, have had fair trials in the first place. Maybe some of those people, were guilty of the crimes that they were found guilty of, but maybe many of them were not. And that's very, very worrying.
There's so many questions I have right there, but allow me to play devil's advocate for a little bit. You're speaking about the research that actually suggests that the death penalty, or instituting a death penalty, is really ineffective in this particular state. How would you then respond to, for example, a Botswana, which has now decided to come on and resume with the very same death penalty, right? So they've decided they'd remove the death penalty. Botswana now has resumed with the death penalty. So would that not necessarily be pointing to a fact that at some level or another, countries still believe that the death penalty is effective, especially where curbing issues around heinous crimes are actually concerned?
Yes, exactly. So it is something that we look at. Of course, people ask us, what about heinous crimes? For example, awful crimes like child abuse. What do you say about that? We still say that our research over decades has found that it doesn't deter those crimes, and that we need to look at the root causes for those crimes. We need to really educate people. We need to look at the childhoods that people are having in the first place, which then becomes, where they become people who then commit these crimes. And with regards to Botswana, yes, it's not that they repealed the law, it's that there was a lull in executions, and then last year, as far as I understand, they executed 2 men, and they've resumed executions again, and that is worrying to us, because we still think that judicial system reform is better. If you look at the US, which is probably one of your most famous countries, that many of the states still have the death penalty.
I know that Washington, D.C. took away the death penalty.
They have recently, exactly, which shows that there is a little bit of people realizing it's not working. But if you look at the people who actually sit on death row, who are waiting to be executed, they are often people of low socioeconomic standing, and they are often ethnically African-American men.
So you're saying, and advocating, correct me if I'm wrong, that sometimes the death penalty may be instituted almost as a form of culling. So in other words, there are way too many African Americans. Let's institute a death penalty, because when you look at American statistics, the number of people, African Americans, that are actually in federal prisons are significantly African American, even though African Americans constitute as the minority within the countries, or within the United States itself.
Exactly, and it's not that we're saying, I suppose, that there's a
purge.
A purge, but we're saying that why are these men there? What sorts of lives do they have in the first place? What are the opportunities that they're given? What are the fair trials that they're given? And the areas, the development of the societies where they're from, if inner city societies or how they've grown up, why is that not being looked at? If you're seeing a certain group of people who look and come from a certain background are most of the people sitting on death row. So that's what we're saying, is that judicial systems have to end in the States, but if it was reinstated here, for example, we would not be surprised to see that your low socioeconomic young black man will be the person sitting on death row, right?
Is it because the young black man cannot get themselves an adequate lawyer to actually represent them, or the young black man
it could be
simply
that,
because it's black and therefore we're just going to treat the young black man as we would?
As we would, exactly. It could be that they can't afford a proper lawyer, but it could also be that they come from very, very difficult circumstances and backgrounds, and that those root causes need to be addressed. Education needs to be fixed. People need to be offered opportunities. People need to be offered dignity and their human rights from a young age. And that's not happening, and that's the same in the States. So that's what we advocate for. And also, mistakes are made. So often, people are put on death row who are then later found to have not committed the crime. So for us as an organization, the death penalty is just not something that we would ever support, even under any crime. We're not saying, of course, that people should be treated so that they would have impunity for those crimes, but they should have fair trials, and they should have proper representation, and also the root causes in general in these countries need to be addressed, and they also need to look at laws. One of the countries that executes quite a lot of people is Iran. They've had a 50% cut in 2018, which is absolutely astounding.
So it says a lot about societal issues there.
Yeah.
We unfortunately have to wrap up our conversation, but really it's insightful just to look at where the figures are currently sitting in terms of the death penalty, and also the reasons behind some countries are still choosing to institute a death penalty. And you say that it's perhaps looking at mitigating and looking at the lower income groups, and some may say that it's actually a form of purging. But thanks a lot, Mienke, for joining us in studio this afternoon. Mienke, they're speaking to us about, look, in terms of exactly what figures are looking like where the death penalty is concerned, especially